The courtroom doors creaked open, and every sound in the room seemed to pause. Lawyers looked up from their files. The judge, mid-sentence, stopped and turned. Jurors leaned forward in their chairs. Through the doors came a little girl no more than 9 years old, walking with slow, steady steps across the tiled floor. Her name was Lily, and though she didn't say a word, her presence commanded attention. She wore a pale blue dress and tightly gripped a leash in her left hand. On the other end of the leash walked Scout, a golden retriever with calm eyes and a soft step. Unlike the adults in suits and heels, Scout didn't flinch under the courtroom's pressure. His focus never left Lily, his ears flicking as she moved. No one in the room had expected this. Yes, they had read the court filing about a comfort animal. But seeing Lily, a child witness in a sensitive and emotionally charged case, step forward with the calmness of someone twice her age was something else entirely. The bailiff led them to the front. A courtroom aide whispered something to the judge, and he nodded. He spoke gently to Lily, inviting her to take her place at the witness stand. She nodded once and moved to the chair. Scout, unbothered by the unfamiliar setting, sat at her feet, tail curled neatly under him. The courtroom had seen difficult testimonies before, but this was different. There was a quiet tension, not because of the gravity of the case alone, but because no one quite knew what this young girl might say or if she would speak at all. It wasn't a normal day in court. The case had already made headlines in the county. It involved a custody battle, a protection order, and allegations that no one wanted to speak of too loudly. The defendant sat still at the other side of the room, expression unreadable. The jury had been instructed not to let emotion affect their judgment, but emotion had entered the room the moment Lily had. The judge leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand. "Lily, thank you for being here today," he said, his voice softer than before. "We understand this is difficult. You don't have to be afraid. Just speak when you're ready." Lily glanced toward Scout. She reached down and rested her fingers on his head. He didn't move, but the way his eyes softened told her everything was okay. Across the courtroom, the defense lawyer stood and adjusted his tie. He approached the stand with cautious steps. The prosecutor gave him a hard glance. Everyone knew the rules. Be gentle, go slow. But even the most careful words can feel sharp when spoken in a courtroom this tense. The questioning began simple at first. Her name, her school, her age. She answered softly, clearly. Her voice, though quiet, did not waver. The room leaned in to listen. She was young, but not fragile. Every answer she gave built a kind of stillness that filled the courtroom. It was as if people had stopped breathing just to hear her speak. Scout never looked away from her. A court reporter's fingers clicked across the keys. Jurors wrote notes but kept glancing up, their pens slowing. The judge no longer sifted through papers. He was listening now, really listening. This wasn't the first time Lily had talked about what had happened, but it was the first time she was doing it in front of strangers, under oath, across from the person who had once lived in her house. Still, she spoke, and Scout stayed. He didn't bark, didn't shift. He was her anchor, quiet and unshaken. And though no one knew it yet, something extraordinary was about to happen. Because Lily hadn't just come to testify. She had come with a signal. And the moment she used it, this entire courtroom and the people in it would never be the same again. 6 months before that courtroom moment, Lily barely spoke at all. She had been placed in foster care after a long and painful investigation. Though kind and supportive, her foster parents couldn't coax more than a whisper out of her. In therapy sessions, she often sat motionless, clutching a small stuffed animal. She'd flinch at certain sounds and retreat inward when asked direct questions. That's when Dr. Ramos, her trauma therapist, made a suggestion, one that changed everything. "There's a therapy dog available," she told Lily's caseworker. "He's helped kids through things like this before. His name is Scout." Scout wasn't just any dog. He had been trained through a special program that paired highly intelligent, emotionally intuitive dogs with children navigating court systems, foster care, and trauma recovery. Unlike typical therapy animals, Scout had experience in high-stress environments, courthouses, police stations, hospitals. But what made him special wasn't his training, it was his patience. The first time Scout met Lily, she didn't even look at him. She sat in the corner of the room, back turned, arms crossed. Scout didn't move. He just lay down in the center of the room, head on his paws, silent and still. After 15 minutes, Lily glanced over. 10 minutes after that, she was sitting, cross-legged beside him. By their third session, she was brushing his fur. In the fourth, she spoke just one word. Hi, that's all it took. Week by week, Lily began to open up. Not all at once, not in big, dramatic ways, but in pieces. Sometimes she'd whisper into Scout's ear while Dr. Ramos listened from the other side of the room. Sometimes she'd draw pictures and lay them in front of Scout, as if asking him what he thought. Always, Scout listened. Always, he stayed. Lily's voice grew stronger as Scout remained by her side. She began to talk not just about her favorite cartoons or the books she liked, but about what had happened, the parts she'd kept locked away. Her words didn't come out in neat lines or legal terms. They came out in stories. Stories she told. Scout first. Dr. Ramos introduced a coping method for Lily that involved nonverbal cues, hand signals, that helped her communicate feelings she couldn't say aloud. One of those signals was made by wiggling the fingers subtly at her side. They worked together to teach Scout what that meant. I need help. Please come close. The first time they practiced it, Lily gave the signal from across the room. Scout stood, walked directly to her, and rested his head in her lap. The second time, she did it while sitting silently during a tense moment in therapy. Scout responded. Again. By the third week, Lily didn't just trust the signal, she relied on it. Scout had become more than a dog. He was her security blanket, her safe space, and her translator when her voice failed. She taught him that signal with care, and he responded without hesitation every single time. When the time came for the legal process to move forward, Lily was asked a critical question. Would she be willing to testify? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at Scout. Then, with her fingers resting on his fur, she gave a slow nod. But only if Scout comes with me, she said. Preparations began. Her foster mother, therapist, caseworker, and a court liaison all worked together. To make it possible, Scout would be cleared as a support animal for the courtroom. Lily would sit beside him, and if she ever needed help, if it became too much, she could give the signal. Now, as she sat on that courtroom bench, her hand hovered near her leg. Scout's ears perked up, because Lily was about to use the signal, and when she did, nothing in that courtroom would remain the same. The morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the courthouse, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors. For weeks, the trial had been the focus of the local community, a story whispered in quiet conversations at schools, churches, and grocery stores. But today was different. Today was the day Lily would take the stand. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Lawyers exchanged last-minute notes, the judge reviewed documents, and the jury shuffled papers nervously in their seats. Reporters filled the gallery, their cameras resting silently but ready. The room felt both heavy with expectation and fragile, like a thin glass waiting to shatter. Lily sat quietly, her small hand wrapped tightly round Scout's leash. Scout sat obediently by her side, his amber eyes calm and steady. Though the courtroom was filled with strangers, Lily's gaze was focused solely on her dog. He was her anchor in the storm. The bailiff called the court to order. The judge tapped his gavel. We will now hear testimony from the witness, Lily Johnson. All eyes turned to the young girl. She stood slowly, her knees barely steady. A hush fell over the room. The prosecutor approached, offering a gentle smile. Lily, can you tell us your full name for the record? My name is Lily Johnson, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper but clear. The questioning began cautiously. The prosecutor asked about her school, her favorite subjects, and hobbies. Lily answered each with a growing sense of confidence. Scout's presence seemed to ease her nerves, and her voice grew stronger with every word. But the moment everyone had been dreading was approaching, the cross-examination by the defense attorney. The room tensed as he stood and approached the stand. Lily, he began, his tone measured but firm. Can you tell us what happened on the night of September 12th? Lily's eyes flickered downward. Her fingers twitched near Scout's side, but no one noticed yet. The defense attorney pressed harder, asking the same question in different ways, trying to shake her story. Her voice wavered. The room held its breath. The tension was palpable. Then, very subtly, Lily gave the secret hand signal, a gentle wiggle of two fingers near her leg. Scout's ears pricked up instantly. He shifted, resting a paw lightly on Lily's foot. A silent reassurance. The courtroom gasped. Some jurors leaned forward, eyes wide. The judge raised a hand, calling for quiet. The bailiff glanced at the judge, confused but respectful. For a moment, the room was frozen in time. The judge called for a brief recess, motioning for attorneys to approach the bench. Outside the courtroom, whispers spread quickly. What did the signal mean? Was Lily in distress? Inside, the judge spoke with both attorneys. After a few minutes, he made a decision that surprised many. He returned to the bench and addressed the courtroom. In light of the circumstances, I will allow Scout, the therapy dog, to remain beside the witness during the remainder of Lily's testimony. Murmurs filled the room. Allowing an animal in the courtroom was unusual, especially in such a high-profile case. But everyone understood the reason. Lily's face brightened slightly. Scout settled closer, his head resting gently on her lap. The defense attorney nodded reluctantly, recognizing that further attempts to unsettle Lily would be difficult. With Scout by her side, Lily's confidence blossomed. She spoke clearly and calmly, describing events with a clarity that surprised many. The jurors listened intently, their notes filled with careful observations. The prosecution's team exchanged relieved glances. This was the testimony they had hoped for, a brave girl finding her voice in the most difficult of circumstances. Scout never left her side. His steady presence was a beacon of comfort and strength. As the courtroom adjourned for the day, many left with heavy hearts, but a renewed sense of hope. The little girl who had once been too afraid to speak had stood tall. And in the middle of that courtroom, a silent signal had changed everything. The courtroom was still settling back into session after the unexpected decision. The air was thick with anticipation as the judge allowed Scout to remain beside Lily. It was an unusual sight, a golden retriever lying quietly at the foot of the witness stand, but one that quickly became a symbol of strength and calm. Lily shifted slightly in her seat and looked down at Scout. Her small hand found his soft fur, gently stroking it as if drawing comfort from the connection they shared. Scout responded by pressing his head into her lap, his eyes warm and steady, a silent promise that she was not alone. The prosecutor gave a nod of encouragement and resumed questioning. Lily, can you tell us about the days leading up to the event? With Scout beside her, Lily's answers grew more confident. She spoke carefully but clearly, recalling moments that had once seemed locked away in a place too painful to visit. Her voice, steady now, wove a story of fear and hope, confusion and courage. The defense attorney watched closely, trying to find an opening, but every time he tried to shake her, Scout's presence seemed to anchor Lily's resolve. When the attorney's questions grew sharper, Lily's fingers twitched the signal. Scout immediately lifted a paw and nudged her hand. The courtroom had grown quiet, every eye fixed on the small interaction between girl and dog. The jurors, court staff, and even the judge seemed moved by the unspoken language unfolding before them. At one point, Lily paused mid-answer, her eyes glistening. Scout shifted closer, licking her hand gently. She took a deep breath and continued. It was clear to everyone that Scout was more than a companion. He was her shield against fear. Outside the courtroom, reporters whispered about the unusual testimony. Some legal experts debated the precedent of allowing therapy animals during trials. But inside, it was simply about one brave girl finding her voice. As the session progressed, Lily described how she had felt trapped, scared to speak out against someone she once trusted. Her story painted a picture of a child caught in a storm of emotions too complex for words alone. The jury listened intently, their expressions a mixture of sympathy and resolve. The judge, typically stoic, occasionally glanced down at Scout with a quiet smile. Scout's calm presence seemed to create a safe space not just for Lily, but for everyone in the room. When the defense attorney attempted a particularly difficult line of questioning, Lily gave her secret signal again. Scout stood and placed his paw on her knee, steadying her. The moment was so subtle yet so powerful that many in the courtroom felt it deeply. The bailiff, the court clerk, and even some jurors exchanged glances. They all understood the bond that had formed between Lily and Scout, a bond that was now shaping the course of justice. After nearly an hour of testimony with Scout at her side, Lily began to relax visibly. Her answers flowed more freely. She even smiled briefly when the prosecutor asked about her favorite games and school subjects. The courtroom atmosphere softened, the tension easing as everyone witnessed the healing power of trust and companionship. When the judge finally called a recess, many rose slowly, unwilling to leave the moment behind. Outside the courtroom doors, whispers turned into conversations about the remarkable scene inside a child, and her dog breaking through barriers that words alone could not. Lily and Scout walked slowly down the hallway, their bond stronger than ever. For Lily, Scout was more than a dog. He was the key to unlocking a future where fear no longer ruled. In that moment, the silent signal and the loyal dog had done more than stop a courtroom. They had changed the way people thought about courage, and the story was far from over. The courtroom slowly returned from recess, but the energy had shifted. The decision to allow Scout to remain beside Lily wasn't just a gesture of compassion. It was a bold move that surprised many in the legal community. This was uncharted territory. Therapy dogs were still relatively new in courtrooms, and few judges had faced a moment quite like this. The judge, a seasoned man known for his fairness, understood the delicate balance between justice and empathy. His gavel struck the bench, signaling the continuation of proceedings, but his eyes softened as he addressed the room. Let this be a reminder that our justice system must serve not only the law, but the humanity of those involved, he said quietly. If this young witness finds strength in her companion's presence, then it is our duty to accommodate that. The statement echoed throughout the courtroom. Reporters took notes furiously. Social media buzzed with reactions. Some legal experts debated the implications, but most agreed this moment transcended routine courtroom procedure. Scout settled back at Lily's side, his presence a comforting constant. Lily, once tentative, now seemed emboldened by his proximity. Her breathing steadied. Her gaze grew clearer, and when she spoke, it was with renewed confidence. The prosecutor continued, carefully guiding her through questions about the events that had led to the trial. Lily's words painted vivid pictures of dark nights, whispered fears, and small moments of hope. Each detail was shared with a clarity that stunned many who had anticipated a shaky testimony. The defense attorney, now faced with an unshakable witness and an immovable courtroom decision, adjusted his strategy. His questions became less aggressive, more measured. It was clear he recognized the emotional weight the dog's presence carried. But it wasn't just the attorneys who noticed. The jurors, too, were visibly affected. Their eyes no longer looked away from Lily's face. Their pens paused mid-note as they absorbed the story unfolding. The room felt less like a battlefield and more like a shared space of understanding. Scout seemed to sense the shift. His tail wagged gently, a subtle sign of approval. When Lily's voice faltered during a difficult question, Scout leaned closer, nudging her hand with his nose. It was a quiet gesture, but it spoke volumes. At one point, Lily looked up at the judge, who nodded encouragingly. That simple exchange seemed to grant her permission to continue, to speak freely without fear. The prosecutor smiled softly. "Thank you, Lily," she said. "You're doing wonderfully." When Lily described how Scout had helped her through the darkest moments, the courtroom was silent. No one doubted the dog's role was more than symbolic. It was essential. After several hours, the day's testimony came to an end. The judge thanked Lily for her courage and assured her the court recognized the importance of her comfort. Outside the courtroom, the buzz grew louder. News crews waited, hoping to capture a glimpse of the young girl and her remarkable companion. But Lily's foster mother gently led her away, shielding her from the spotlight. The story didn't end in that courtroom. It was just beginning. Lawmakers, child advocates, and legal professionals started conversations about how therapy animals could transform the justice system. The idea of allowing support dogs during testimony gained momentum, promising a future where vulnerable witnesses might find their voices more often. For Lily and Scout, the moment was deeply personal, a triumph born from trust and friendship. Back at home, Scout curled up at Lily's feet as she drew pictures of their day, her smile bright and genuine. The bond they had built had carried her through fear and doubt, and together, they had changed a courtroom and perhaps, one day, the world. The courtroom buzzed with quiet anticipation as the days passed and Lily's testimony circulated in the minds of everyone involved. What began as a simple moment, a little girl signaling to her dog, had blossomed into something far greater than anyone could have imagined. News of the trial, and more specifically Scout's role in it, spread beyond the courthouse walls. Local news stations aired interviews with legal experts, child psychologists, and advocates for trauma-informed care. The story touched hearts, capturing the attention of viewers nationwide. At the heart of it was Lily, a brave child who had overcome unimaginable fear with the help of her loyal companion. Her testimony didn't just help secure justice in her case, it sparked a movement. Advocates began pushing for laws that would allow therapy animals to accompany vulnerable witnesses. During court proceedings across the country, judges and attorneys who had once been skeptical started reconsidering their stance, influenced by the undeniable power of trust and comfort embodied in Scout. Meanwhile, inside the courthouse, Lily and Scout's story became a touchstone for legal reform. Judges spoke about the importance of humanizing the courtroom experience, especially for children who faced the daunting task of testifying about trauma. One judge from another state reached out to Lily's team, expressing interest in adopting similar support animal policies. The legal community began to recognize that justice was not only about facts and laws, but also about the well-being of those who stood before the court. For Lily, though, it wasn't about headlines or policies. It was about feeling safe. She continued attending therapy sessions with Dr. Ramos, who marveled at the progress Lily had made. The once quiet, withdrawn girl now spoke openly about her feelings and experiences. Scout remained her constant companion, both in and out of court. Lily's foster mother noticed changes too. The girl who had once been afraid to sleep alone now greeted each day with a sense of hope. Her laughter returned, bright and clear, echoing through their small home. The community rallied around Lily's family, offering support and encouragement. Schools invited her to speak about her experience, hoping to educate other children about courage and healing. Scout became a local hero, too. The therapy dog who had quietly supported Lily during her darkest moments now helped countless others. He visited hospitals, schools, and community centers, always ready to provide comfort. The trial itself concluded with a verdict that reflected the weight of the evidence and the strength of Lily's testimony. The defendant was held accountable, and a protective order was put in place. But beyond the legal outcome, the real victory was the message. Lily and Scout had sent a message that healing could take many forms and that courage sometimes comes in the quietest moments. Their story inspired countless others to consider the role of compassion and justice. It opened doors to new ways of supporting those who must face their fears in public, and reminded everyone that behind every case, there's a human being who deserves kindness and understanding. As Lily looked up at Scout one afternoon, her eyes shining with gratitude, she whispered, "Thank you, Scout. You helped me find my voice." And Scout, ever faithful, simply rested his head on her lap, as if to say, "I'll always be here." The story of Lily and Scout captured hearts far beyond their small Oregon town. As news outlets shared the footage of the courtroom moment, the secret signal, Scout's gentle paw, and the judge's compassionate decision, the tale quickly became a national sensation. Viewers across the United States were moved by the image of a little girl finding strength, not through words alone, but through the loyal presence of her dog. Social media buzzed with hashtags celebrating therapy animals. In the justice system, advocates for trauma-informed care seized the opportunity to promote awareness, emphasizing how support animals could make an enormous difference for vulnerable witnesses. Schools invited Lily to share her story through video calls and presentations, inspiring children who faced their own fears. Her courage became a beacon for those who felt powerless, showing them that help could come in unexpected forms. Lawmakers took notice, too. State representatives in several states began drafting bills to officially allow therapy animals during court testimonies. The ripple effect of one small gesture, the subtle signal, and Scout's faithful response was transforming policies. Judges and attorneys from around the country reached out to Lily's legal team, eager to learn how they could implement similar support for witnesses in their own courtrooms. The judicial community began conversations about blending compassion with procedure, understanding that justice must also care for the well-being of those it serves. Meanwhile, Scout became something of a celebrity in his own right. Fundraisers were organized to support therapy dog training programs nationwide. Charities featured Scout's story to encourage donations and volunteer efforts. The Golden Retriever's calm, steady eyes appeared on posters and websites, symbolizing hope and healing. Back home, Lily's life had changed, but remained rooted in the simple joys of childhood. She returned to school, where she was greeted with warmth and admiration. Friends who once only knew her as quiet now saw her as brave, a girl who had faced fear and come through stronger. Her foster mother spoke often about how Scout had transformed not only Lily's life, but their entire family. The dog's gentle nature brought comfort during tough nights and lightened heavy days. Lily continued to work with Dr. Ramos, exploring new ways to express her feelings and build resilience. She started writing stories about her experiences, hoping to help other children who might feel alone. Through it all, Scout remained by her side, a steady companion and protector. The bond they shared was unbreakable. Their journey, once private and painful, had blossomed into a public movement, and it all began with a silent signal in a courtroom. The story served as a reminder that courage isn't always loud or bold. It can be quiet, gentle, and shared between a girl and her dog. As more courtrooms adopted policies to welcome therapy animals, Lily's impact grew. Her bravery opened doors and hearts, helping others find safety and strength. In the years that followed, the world would look back on that moment in the Oregon courthouse as a turning point, a moment when compassion and justice walked hand in paw. For Lily and Scout, it was just the beginning of a lifelong mission to show that no one has to face their fears alone. The courtroom drama had ended months ago, but for Lily and Scout, the journey was far from over. The trial's verdict, a conviction, and a protective order, was a victory. But it was only one chapter in a much larger story about healing and hope. Back at home, Lily's days began to fill with things she had once thought impossible: laughter, friendship, and dreams for the future. With Scout always at her side, she felt a new kind of freedom, the freedom to be herself. Their bond deepened every day. Scout was no longer just a therapy dog assigned for court appearances. He had become Lily's best friend, her protector, and her anchor in a sometimes confusing world. Together, they faced school challenges and new social experiences. Lily's teachers noticed her growing confidence. She raised her hand in class, made new friends, and even joined the school's art club. Drawing became a favorite way to express emotions, too big for words. Scout was there for all of it. He accompanied her to therapy sessions, to the playground, and sometimes just lay quietly beside her during homework. His steady presence was a reminder that she was never truly alone. But their story also became a catalyst for broader change. Inspired by Lily's courage and Scout's impact, several states introduced legislation allowing therapy animals to accompany vulnerable witnesses in court. Judges and attorneys received training on trauma-informed practices. Courtrooms were redesigned to be less intimidating for children, with safe spaces and accommodations that prioritized emotional well-being. Lily's foster mother, once unsure about the legal battle ahead, became an outspoken advocate for children's rights and therapy animal programs. She spoke at conferences and met with lawmakers, sharing Lily's story and pushing for reforms that would protect more children. The community that had supported Lily throughout the trial continued to rally around her family. Fundraisers helped expand therapy dog programs, and local schools invited Scout for visits, where he would sit patiently as children read to him, building their own confidence. Lily even started writing letters to other children who had faced trauma, encouraging them to find their own sources of strength, whether through animals, friends, or their own inner courage. Her story was shared in magazines, podcasts, and online platforms, reminding people everywhere that healing is a journey made lighter with compassion and companionship. For Lily, the quiet signal she gave in court was more than just a moment of courage. It was the start of a legacy that showed how small acts of trust could ripple outward, changing lives and systems alike. And Scout, ever loyal, continued to be her steady companion, proof that sometimes the greatest heroes don't wear capes, they have fur and fur. As Lily looked toward her future, she knew there would still be challenges ahead. But with Scout by her side and a community of supporters behind her, she was ready to face whatever came next. Because in the middle of a courtroom, with just a subtle signal, a little girl and her dog had stopped everything and started something new.